Now, I like Star Wars, I just think most of it is Clone Wars definitely falls into the crap category. I remember when the show first came out, and I thought it was pretty good. But I only saw like 2, maybe 3 episodes before I lost interest in it. Yeah, looking back at it, I was a little bitch back then. Even though I think this is a great business decision, I still see the flaws of the show. Some of you out there are gonna say, Dr. Delicious, it's a show for kids. Well, I got 2 things to say. Number 1, some of the fans don't consider this a kid show.
And I will, of course, make sure your contributions are noted in my report to Count Dooku.
I'll tell him myself.
Number 2, people use that argument when their show is getting criticized, but they'll never use that when their show is being praised. Sounds a little bit hypocritical. Yeah, the kid show argument isn't really an argument.
George, kindly don't do that. Let Lisa save it you.
Yeah, you can kind of tell the tone is all over the place. I watched all 6 seasons, all 121 episodes, and thank God it's over with. So I am not going to review the unfinished episodes simply because they are incomplete and they might make changes down the line. Anyway, let's get on with it. I think it's safe to say that this is a war show. I mean, it does say wars twice in its title. When it comes to how the military acts, you would think that it would make sense, but it doesn't. With highly advanced weaponry, they should not be marching as if they're fighting in the 18th century. This was garbage in the prequels, but wouldn't you think that George would look at the show as an opportunity to fix what he did in the prequels? Anyway, the reason why line warfare is now obsolete is partially because of the power of weaponry over the past 100 years.
In spite of all of these points, linear tactics eventually succumbed to the inevitable obsolescence of any method or technology.
So this doesn't happen.
Enemy nuke incoming! It's over!
How about they fight in areas that take cover? I mean, they did this in the original trilogy. Sometimes they just charge into battle and everything works out. Look at this scenario. I understand why a Force user would survive, but the clones should be getting massacred. They're fighting as if they're in a first-person shooter.
See how they bait their trap? I will help you spring.
I can't even do this in an FPS. Now, when the droids march in lines, I could maybe forgive them. However, they're in a transcendental technological universe that should have more advanced AI. And all the advancement of the AI goes to their personalities? Huh?
This is a lot more fun when they're not shooting back. I still can't seem to hit anything.
Why are they overly social yet they are programmed to kill? They are jokes. Literally jokes.
The super tank is impervious to all damage.
OM5, are you still there? Yes, I think I'm right next to you. Where is Lord Toggle taking us? OM5? OM5! Yes, sir. Right away, sir. Don't leave me. Sir, we need to get our power recharged.
Not this again! How could your power cells be so depleted?
You would not let us ride on one of those creatures with you, sir. You would allow us to close down for a few moments.
This seems counterproductive, and at least the prequels weren't this extreme.
I'm ambassador to the Supreme Council. I'm taking these people to Coruscant.
Where are you taking them?
To Coruscant.
Coruscant? That doesn't compute. Wait, you're under arrest.
It's one thing when the soldiers are attempting to execute these tactics, however, it's blatant that the people in charge are depicted even worse. Anakin should not be a successful general. This guy wings it all the time, yet he comes up on top with little to no penalty.
I trust you've already formulated a brilliant plan to rescue the Senator. As a matter of fact, I have. But do we have a plan B? Every operation needs a backup, Anakin. I don't have a backup. Yet. But I do have a plan for getting on that ship. Really? The enemy sensors are obviously damaged, so we'll sneak in behind them and dock at the emergency airlock. That's your plan? Just fly there, land, hope they don't spot us, and walk in the door. Basically. Commander Cody, do you copy? Captain Rex, please respond. They should have checked in from the Rishi station hours ago. It appears your captain follows orders as well as you do. Perhaps Cody is boring Rex with standard procedures and protocol.
General, I really hope you know what's up to me.
So do I, Admiral.
Not very militaristic. I know it's a part of his character, but him leading troops should be disastrous. Anakin had this strategy where getting a homing missile to track his crew's ship so they can skid it on the bridge and destroy General Trench's ship. This should not work. Yet it does because...
You know what's bullshit?
Now, Anakin is a moron. However, Obi-Wan is surprisingly the king of idiots. Just watch what the ginger does.
General Grievous, you have defeated me and taken control of my ship. Congratulations. However, if you're watching this message, that means I'm boarding an escape pod and shall soon be safely away from the ship, which is about to self-destruct. General Grievous, you have defeated me.
He could have ended the war, yet he trolled? I will explain quickly. So Grievous was a MacGuffin in Revenge of the Sith. If the Republic kills him, they win the war. And don't tell me it's a part of his character because he wouldn't do this to jeopardize a mission. In episode 3, he gave away his position purposely, and the droids could have just shot him right there.
Hello there.
But he knew Grievous was cocky, really stupid cocky. Also, he got the job done. But here though, he loses and tells Grievous his plan, which gave him ample amount of time to retreat. Obi-Wan is such an idiot, he should have been depromoted to Padawan. Actually, to Padawan's bitch.
He was my master.
What's even more jarring is the fact that the militaristic acting generals are failures. There's General Frogger who tries to be strict with his droids but constantly gets roasted by them.
So, how is your training going to lead us out of this void?
Well, my training as an officer tells me to use all available resources to stay alive until help comes.
So, your officer training, how exactly did you learn that?
It was drilled into me by my superiors.
Then you were programmed, just like us.
What? No. What do you mean it doesn't belong here?
I don't know, maybe because it has the CIS emblem, you dumbass? Anyway, this guy just sucks. There's Mr. Warners, who was portrayed as pragmatic, but loses in his first battle to Anakin's impractical strategy. The poster child of the general that should be great but isn't is General Grievous. The elephant in the room is, why does everyone in this universe view him as dangerous and important even though he rarely wins any of his battles on screen? It's because no one has a brain. The series had the chance to show why he was important, but they just showed how unaccomplished he was. This guy shouldn't be a general based solely on his lack of achievements. It makes no sense why he was a MacGuffin in the movie when he sucked so much. Here are his 4 victories against the Republic. He destroys a Republic fleet with the Malevolence, but then loses it in the next episode. He evades a cruiser, captures a Jedi, and then loses that same Jedi in the same episode. His fleet destroys a cruiser and captures a Jedi. However though, in that same episode again, he loses the Jedi and his fleet. Lastly, his much bigger fleet destroys a Republic fleet. However, he lost most of his ships and Obi-Wan could have ended the war. These victories aren't so victorious. Based on the movie and show, why hasn't the cis males replaced him already? He's probably the most overrated character in Star Wars, but more on that later. When it comes to the strict military leaders of this show, they usually lose and they're most likely a bad guy. You can tell where the show stands. Should I really be surprised? This is the same show that thinks that using an animal as a military weapon is smart.
Doctor, a word if you please. Your new orders.
What is this? You want me to clone the beast?
While having a 14-year-old girl be a leader in the military.
All right, boys, let's clear a path.
Right away, sir.
Oh, sorry. I meant boy. It's hard to disagree that the show's politics are absurd. Padme was portrayed as a qualified politician. However, she did not want more troops, 5 million more clone troopers to be exact, during a military conflict on a galactic scale. The Clone Wars was a civil war where both sides had the biggest armies in galactic history. When it did pass, it increased the clone army to 8 million. Without that bill, the Republic would have lost the war to the Trade Federation, which had estimated between 100 million to a quintillion of droids.
The creation of more warriors will not end this war. The financial costs alone will bankrupt and cripple the Republic.
Sure, Padme brought up that they will go into debt, but the United States went into debt after the American Revolution and the Civil War. If you look at World War II, it was the most costly war in United States history at $4 trillion, accumulated of course. I bring up World War II because FDR and Truman were a successful liberal administration, and cutting the military leans to the left side of politics. However, cutting it down in an inevitable war is risky to say the least.
Which is why we must vote for this resolution, to promote more diplomacy, and to bring an end to this killing and hatred.
I will agree that peace is good and war sucks, but sometimes you just can't avoid war. Additionally, they demonize the other side for supporting military spending.
What a novel idea. Imagine that. Amidala's actually making sense for once in her life.
The show makes them sinister douchebags. Maybe back in 2008 or 9, this would be considered profound. They try to make their politics relate to the current time. This series launched in 2008 and they try to do a parallel to the war in Iraq. But the US involvement is different than the Republic's involvement because the Republic are fighting separatists, not terrorists. The Iraq War was not inevitable, versus the Clone Wars were. And don't tell me the Jedi Purge would have still have happened and led to the rise of the Empire if the Trade Federation was defeated before Episode 3. Order 66 was successful because the Jedi spread out across the galaxy to combat the already spread out Trade Federation. The clones were able to slaughter the Jedi due to the fact that they isolated them on separate planets. Also, Anakin would not have gone to the dark side as a reason of that he was not denied the rank of Master yet, and he wasn't as concerned about preventing Padme's death before the 3rd episode. Anakin was a crucial part to Order 66. Palpatine couldn't do it with Dooku because Dooku wouldn't have command of the Republic army. I mean, it would be kind of sketchy if a separatist was running a clone army by the Republic. And also, Anakin is far more powerful than Dooku, or at least became more powerful. Back to Padme, it's not as if she knew about Order 66. Plus, she's really not that good of a politician. She even admitted that she is corrupt.
There are rules, Senator.
My friend was murdered. I don't care about rules.
You're a politician, why would you say that?
Rules? My dear, without rules, there's only chaos. Everyone must care about rules.
He's right.
We know that.
Well, the thought doesn't. I shouldn't be shocked. She is married to someone illegally on the Jedi Council, who is a future school shooter. Also, people are trying to assassinate Padme, yet she's always out in the open. I mean, why hasn't someone killed her already?
Isn't it just beautiful? Yes, but I really must insist you go back inside. It's not safe for you out here.
He's right.
Ahsoka, I can't stop living my life.
Well, your life can stop living. Now, Padme was retarded, but she's not as nearly as retarded as Mace Windu. He wanted to put Godzilla on another planet because it was the last of its kind.
I recommend that we transport it off the planet as soon as possible. We can find a place for it to live undisturbed in the Outer Rim.
People freak out when you release a single foreign animal in another environment. Imagine putting this in another environment. So they put it on the planet of Coruscant. Why?
Why? Well, because that's the best place to take it.
Great reasoning, pal. You should become a lawyer. They also made the military planet of Mandalore a pacifist planet for some reason.
Mandalore would never turn against the Republic. The Duchess Satine values peace more than her own life.
Oh, I'm aware of the Duchess's views.
Master Kenobi, Mandalore's violent past is behind us. All of our warriors were exiled to our moon, Concordia. They died out years ago.
Out of anything outside of the Star Wars movies, the Mandalorians were always known for being militaristic. And they made them pacifist? This would be the equivalent to the highly advanced Forerunners from Halo being a primitive race all of a sudden. To be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if 343 did that. Anyway, I'm getting pretty sick of talking about politics. On to the next topic. This topic might seem subjective, but I'll judge it on an objective scale. The music in the Clone Wars is disappointing. One important aspect to note before I start getting into detail, I can't put the score in because of copyright, and muffling it would be unfair. So if you don't take my word for it, I'll put a link in the description for you guys to hear. Getting back on track, in spite of the show implementing the score a lot, I found it to be mediocre. I mean, they did hire a pretty typical composer in Kevin Kiner. It's hard not to say that this is a flaw because music has played an integral part in the Star Wars franchise. It's one of the factors that made Star Wars so iconic. Even the crappy prequels had good music. The Jedi Temple March, Battle of Heroes, Duel of Fates are all classics. Hell, there were some Star Wars video games that created their own high quality music. For the Clone Wars, it doesn't come off as memorable. Now, is the score awful? No, it's average. However, most of the time it needs to have good music for TV shows and movie series. Think of any good or great series. The music is usually of high quality and in some cases amazing. Game of Thrones, Halo, Indiana Jones, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, and SpongeBob to name a few, all have good music. Ideally, music is there for emotion, which is important for memory. When it comes to emotion, an individual will more likely remember a strong emotional time, whether good or bad, compared to a meh one. Since good music elevates emotion, then a good score should make episodes memorable. Now, the importance of a score or a soundtrack in a standalone movie varies, but in a series, it's crucial. For the Clone Wars, it's uninspiring. Just to show you how bland it is, imagine this. Put the Clone Wars score in any other war show and I bet not many people would recognize it. The viewers would just keep watching without realizing. Maybe except for the main theme of the show, just because it has similarities to the original Star Wars theme, but most of it falls into this category. Picture putting the Indiana Jones score in another movie without the audience recognizing it where it's from. You really can't because it stands out while the Clone Wars doesn't due to how generic it is. I wouldn't say this show has a temp track, which is music copied from another score but just altered a bit to avoid copyright. It could be, but I can't prove it. While viewers of Lord of the Rings can recognize the melodies of the score because that creative spark made it stand out. When we analyze the greatest musicians and composers that have ever walked this earth, their music is relatively creative and they did it in a sound way. The Beatles wrote Back in the USSR to be comical. It is somewhat of a parody of Back in the USA, and its genre is surf music. They chose that genre because it had a very American vibe, and the USSR was antithetic to the US. Let's look at the Halo theme composed by Marty O'Donnell. Halo has an epic orchestra with chanting monks, while the theme's melody is based off of Yesterday by the Beatles. Marty O'Donnell chose this because Halo is a war game where humans fight theocratic aliens. These are examples of creativity well executed. When comparing it to the Clone Wars theme, A Galaxy Divided, it's basically the autistic version of the original Star Wars theme. It added and amplified the percussion to seem more military-esque, which was fine, but then transitions to this foreboding villainous theme, which is just misleading to what to come for almost 80% of the song. Like Grievous was a real threat to the Republic. At least Republic Commando developed its own theme, with the Viking opera being an ideal fit. However, it's safe to say it's not special. Except for the theme, of course. Ideally, there needs to be good creativity, which brings something new, while also not sacrificing the integrity of the genre. For instance, it would be pretty stupid if an alien movie had a Drake song in the soundtrack. The scarce amounts of creativity there was, they had elements of electronic music, which is not supposed to be in Star Wars. Why? Well, it takes the viewer out of the fantasy part of Star Wars. Sure, it's what we hear in sci-fi, but Star Wars has always leaned more so to fantasy. When people think of Star Wars, they think of the Force before they think of spaceships. Plus, the music tempo is an issue with the show. They have action scenes that aren't that fast, yet they have fast-paced music. Usually it has an allegro tempo, which means it has a fast BPM, or allegro moderato, which is pretty fast. A lot of times when they're fighting these slow marching droids, it's kinda hard to have a fast-paced score. Even when the Jedi are in battle, they are still slow fights. The music should be at a slower pace, somewhere between a Dante moderato, which is good for the droids because a Dante is considered to be walking pace, and moderato because the clones and Jedi execute quicker than the droids. You could pick from a random scene with music and you will likely hear a fast tempo. When Anakin is ordering his men to uncloak his ship, the music is around 140 BPM, which is allegro. A slower BPM would be appropriate here. Think of it like a dance. You dance at the beat of the music. Also, this show has too much music in their scenes. You can make a scene more intense without having music at all. All these duels lack intensity, with the fact that we all know the majority of these main characters seen throughout the series will live in Revenge of the Sith and beyond. So having this much music puts salt in the wound. I'll show you why scenes without music can make the atmosphere more intense. The opening scene from Saving Private Ryan and from Inglourious Basterds are heightened because they have no score.
You're sheltering enemies of the state, are you not? Yes. You're sheltering them underneath your floorboards, aren't you?
Now when we look at the Clone Wars, I can't remember one duel without music at some part during the duel. Remember from the original trilogy, the lightsabers battles didn't have music half the time. This helped by increasing the intensity. There's an actual instance where they did this right. My favorite scene in the entire show was the Chicken Walker assault on Umbera, considering there is no score. It was a great way to introduce this group of episodes because so many clones died in this one and in the 3 following. Just hearing the battle rage on made that scene so much better than the rest of them. If they had more of this would be great. Just hearing the sound effects and more action scenes would be awesome. Believe it or not, there are some pieces in the score that are above average. What Kevin Kiner did in Ambush, Rising Malevolence, and Weapons Factory were good, but that's really it. As I said before, you can check in the link down below. Anyway, let's beat on a new drum. If you don't have show, don't tell in your story, it's boring. If you're asking yourself why show, don't tell is crucial, it's because it forces the audience to make an interpretation which makes them think, no matter how simple it is. And if they're thinking about it, then they're not bored. I remember learning this when I was 12, and I can tell that the Clone Wars writers failed the 7th grade. They spell almost everything as if it's a spelling bee. There are so many moments where they state the obvious.
Eels. Very dangerous.
No shit, Sherlock. What are the other options? Victor Crumb was gonna use the eels to tickle them? Okay, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed. For instance, my mom wanted to hold me back an extra year in kindergarten.
I'm kind of retarded.
Even when I was that young, I knew electricity can't be dangerous. I mean, what should I expect from someone named Shit Fisto?
Looks like I'm her favorite. I'm kind of disappointed. Only the droids follow me.
We already knew why Anakin was upset at.
I'm kind of disappointed.
We don't need him to explain why he's disgruntled. It's redundant.
They all panic? I'm about to panic.
Shut up, bitch. When she said,
They all panic?
the tone of her voice gave the audience enough information of her current state. Literally cutting out the last bit was a vast improvement. The excessive explanations are one thing, but the Jedi fortune cookies are a bane of the show. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's these statements at the beginning of every episode. They literally tell you what the moral of the story is. What kind of show does that? Let the audience figure it out on their own. Let them think. Worst part about this, they mention the statement in dialogue.
The challenge of hope is to overcome corruption.
You must have hope, Satine. Hope will only go so far.
The future has many paths, choose wisely.
But remember, always in motion is the future, and many possible futures there are.
The path to evil may bring great power, but not loyalty.
Can make amends for your mistake by destroying this witch.
I don't think that will be happening, will it, Savage? Remember where your true loyalties lie.
With you, mistress.
The first step towards loyalty is trust.
It may be difficult, but these are difficult times, and it's proven effective. I suppose your loyalty to your men is to be commended. They seem to admire this.
In one of their finale arcs, they had the dumbest cookie yet.
To my father was matters less than my memory of him. Wise Bumba Fett's morals a Jedi fortune cookie.
I see now I've done terrible things. But you started when you murdered my father. I'll never forgive you.
Boba Fett is a school shooter. There's no way in hell anyone should take his moral compass seriously. SpongeBob has a great example of show don't tell. The episode Procrastination, you probably remember it being the essay episode. Not once in the episode do they say the word procrastination. Instead, they show it, and it's fantastic. While in the Clone Wars, this is a pretentious move by the creators to make the show more profound than it actually is. They make a new cookie for every episode, but they really have one theme for their show.
War versus peace.
We are peacekeepers. We are Jedi from the Galactic Republic. Our ship clashed a few miles away and one of us is very badly injured. We need your help.
Violence breeds violence. Jedi are no peacekeepers.
Chairman, I promised the Tals that we would leave them in peace. This is now an internal affair of Pantora. The great Tai Sen, son of suns, asks again that you leave, or it will mean war. Then war it is.
I was just thinking about what you said earlier, about enjoying the peace while it lasts. As a Jedi, I'm not sure I know how to do that. Master Windu has said we are keepers of the peace, not warriors. However, once the war is over, it will be our job to maintain the peace. Yes, but will we do so as keepers of the peace or warriors? And what's the difference? I don't have all the answers, Ahsoka. Like you, I'm a learner. What does your master tell you? Anakin? Oh, you might find some of his thoughts on the future, a bit radical. Really? Why? Let's just say my master will always do what needs to be done. I'm not even sure how peacetime will agree with him.
Anyway, let me show you my last reason why this show sucks in this video.
What's our cookie? Do you even remember the cookie?
Where we are going always reflects where we came from.
Well, you read it
Well
off the
done.
screen.
Well
It's not
done
like
there.
you remember that. Like, is that the cookie you wrote, or did we change it?
No, that was pretty much the cookie.
That's pretty much it.
He wrote them and he didn't even care. Thanks for watching the video, guys. I truly appreciate it. Now, if you like this video, I really appreciate it that you rate, subscribe, or heck, even donate to my Patreon. Or you just simply just had pity for me because you just thought my video was that bad. Anyway, now when it comes to part 2, if this video garnishes enough views, I will make a part 2. But if it doesn't, oh well. But anyway, once again, guys, thanks for watching. I hope you guys have a great day.